Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oz by Drone, episode 13.
We slept in.
Look, there's been a little bit of fun this morning. Wirecast was working beautifully during testing before the show today. Everything was fine, and then it comes to showtime, and John shows up, and the world ends.
Well, fell over. It happens all the time.
Yeah, so John came in and I couldn't hear him, he couldn't hear me, and then I said, okay, I'm going to go to air and tell you that I'm going to come back later on, and I couldn't go to air either, so don't know what happened, but it is what it is. So welcome to Oz by Drone Live anyway.
Yeah, we're live now.
So let me get my notes here, and just a couple of points about today. Please do chat in the chat room, and I'll bring up your comments on the screen in a little while. So we'll be there shortly. That's number one. Please do use a hashtag #question if you want to ask us a question just to grab our attention. Best question of the day gets a spanner. For those who don't know what that is, that's that little spanner thing in the chat room so you can be a moderator. I was going to have a guest today, ex-Jet from New Zealand, but unfortunately that fell through as well. Episode 13, nothing's going to go to plan, but it is what it is. Perhaps if we don't get to the end of the kind of 1 hour from now, we may open up like we did last time and invite you to come in and join the show. We'll see what happens. We'll play it by ear on that one. So, before we move on to anything else, let me quickly share. So this channel has been growing. You notice we've got a larger number of subscribers now. We're over 200 now. Thank you for those people who've joined us. It is important to ask you to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and click that bell button. If you don't click the bell, you won't get notified and you won't know when we're going live. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Facebook. I'm going to ask you a favor. Please share the link to this broadcast now to your friends via Facebook, particularly to anyone who's interested in drones and flying and all sorts of other weird stuff as well. Or tweet it out, share the link to this page so other people can come and join us as well. And the last two usual regular announcements: mail, if you want to send us anything by snail mail, 5/127 Princess Highway, Sylvania, and if you want to send us any video content to share in the show, upload at gregkuhnert.com. Please send a link. Do not send the actual video file because it'll kill the mail server. But feel free to definitely send in some video content. Now, I've got one more thing before I move into news, and you may have noticed in the title for the video, it's got a hashtag in the title called I Am a Creator. And this is something that I came across through Ozbeach Andy, who's one of our regulars. So Andy had this hashtag in one of his videos, and I thought, what is this? And I did a little bit of research and digging, and it's a community of people who are creating original content on YouTube, and they're supporting each other. So I encourage everyone here, have a look around. These are the little guys who aren't big YouTube channels, who are creating all sorts of unusual stuff. Just search for that in YouTube and have a look at some of those channels and support them as well. Okay. Now
you caught up pretty well then. You tried to put in about 10 minutes of stuff into 3, so we're catching up. That's pretty good. That's
good. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on, and we're going to go with our news. So the first thing in news today is actually news. Unusual one. The news is news. So there's a link that's in the description for the video to a page that's created by Jazz Ariel. He creates this news content for both for us and also for Ken Heron. So he is supporting our channel with some of the information that we share with you on a weekly basis. So please do have a look at that. And yeah, and it's some really good, interesting stuff. Not all of it we use, but do have a look at that.
I think you can add to that too, can't you, Greg? So if some people are going in there and having a look, you can add any special news that you might have as well.
Not yet. And we're not planning on doing that. It's a wiki site, but that page is restricted just because we don't want to stuff up Ken's show or my show with it being edited 2 minutes before going to air.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, it's good. Well, there's a lot of stuff on there. I know that, having a look. So it's a great feed, almost like a stock exchange feed of what's going on in the industry. And that's pretty good.
Absolutely. Second thing to have a look at today, something unusual that John and I didn't talk about beforehand. Have you heard of this one, John?
I sure have. I've just had a good look at the aeroplane a couple of days ago, and it looks to be a mighty machine. Whether it'll become a phantom killer, we don't know. I think that Parrot are very serious players. They've got some great products, and they're obviously moving ahead. They're not backing off at all. So I think this one's worth a very close look. Price-wise, it's a killer for sure. It's much cheaper than the Phantoms. It has all of the bells and whistles as far as 25 minutes of flight time. It's at 50 kilometre an hour, low noise. You go through the list there, and all I can't really work out is how to pronounce the name.
ANAFI. It sounds like someone's trying to sneeze. By the way, apologies to those people who are chatting in the chat room. The technology on episode 13, it's not coming up on the screen again, so I'll try and get that happening during the show. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but I can certainly see your chat there. So let's play a video. I've got a marketing video from the manufacturer. Let's have a quick look at that. So definitely an interesting aircraft, and just an interesting point, and I thought this one was really cool, just reading the features of it. It's got what they call a dolly zoom. Now, this is also known as the Hitchcock zoom or the vertigo zoom. So if you can imagine you're tracking an object, and let's say it's a boat in the middle of a river or something like that. Let's say we're tracking the pea green boat.
Yes,
and
why not?
Hypothetically, the aircraft is moving towards you, but it's changing the zoom so that the perspective of everything else around you changes, but it keeps the perspective of that object the same. Very
good shot. It's a great shot.
Yeah, look, that's an incredible feature. And just having a look at a few of the other things, so 320 grams. Here's another interesting one. It's got a 180-degree tilt.
Now, that is an interesting one because that's more an industrial level, really, when you want to inspect a bridge from underneath and you position the aircraft underneath the bridge, you can inspect vertical up. So a Matrice 200's got a top-facing camera. Some of the Typhoon stuff uses cameras where they can mount on top. So I can't think of an application for that, except that if it's clear of the propellers, a vertical shot looks nice. Say you're at the bottom of a waterfall and you want to look up the waterfall and then track down. I mean, there are shots. I mean, it certainly does open up a lot of possibilities. It's just that we've not really, in a consumer product, had those kind of shots available before. The Phantom 4, for those of you that don't use that aircraft, zooms up 30 degrees, as does the Mavic. That's a pretty standard thing, but you've got the props in the shot, of course, once you go above 5 degrees above the horizon.
Yeah. So that looks interesting, and I'm guessing that a couple of things, the engineering kind of stuff that you've mentioned, as well as doing 360 degrees panorama globe virtual reality, is something that I'm sure will come.
Yep. One of the things they won't mention yet that I noticed in Parrot is the range. So Parrot have always used a fairly domestic level Wi-Fi. They don't use a Lightbridge type system or an OcuSync type system. And so without that proprietary technology, you're not going to get the range out of this that you get out of the Phantom. And I notice that that's not necessarily advertised. They're talking about 2 kilometres, which they talk about with the Parrot Disco. That's more like 1.5 kilometres usually. And yet DJI says 7 kilometres for a Mavic. Well, you're not flying a Mavic that far and getting home in one battery anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it certainly. Here's what I think. I think it's an interesting time, and how much you want to bet the Mavic next generation is going to be released really, really soon now. I mean, people have been saying DJI are holding on to whatever it is next, right? So
yeah, it's a real hard one to guess what it's going to be. We saw the Phantom 4.2 come out. That was a pretty interesting release, a few quiet props and so forth. A little additions to it. Not a great huge change there. There are some under the hood changes that make the Phantom 2 pretty special. But we can look at those later. Just looking at the ANFI now, I think it's definitely worth a look at the price it is. I believe it's $700 US at the moment out on retail. Is that right, Greg? Is that what
I
you
believe
have?
so. Yeah, they're about $700.
So it's $1,000 here in Australia. You'll buy a Phantom 4, not the Pro, but these days they're walking out the door a bit cheaper now too. So, but this has got a 21 megapixel camera, so it's even a slightly better camera. Whether the stabilization's is good, we don't know. It's always going to be, let's face it, everything's going to be compared to the DJI products in terms of a measure of what they are. Well, I think we should just have a look at it for what it is. I think it's probably a quite well-engineered little piece of kit. Yeah,
look, I think it is. And, look, I think DJI will react to it. That's the first thing. But we'll just have to wait and see what that is.
Yep.
By the way, one other thing that it does have that's really, really cool, I think, is it's doing 4K HDR video as well.
Yep.
So, those challenging shots where you've got exposure problems, flying over water and what have you, this will take care of that as well.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Okay, look, let's move on. So the next topic I've got on the list today is CASA. So you've been doing some stuff with CASA, and you had a few points about what's happening with CASA. But just before we talk to them, we've got a short little video that's been put out by CASA recently. Not about regulations, but about the common sense rules of flying in Australia. For those who are just new to flying, we'll just quickly share that information for you.
Rules apply when you fly.
So some of this is, pretty much common sense, but 120 metres, for those who are regular drone flyers, you'll know about that, of course. 30 metres from people, unless you are licensed and you have a special set of procedures to get close to people that's been approved by CASA. Don't fly near airports and helipads. Emergency services. Don't go and disturb wildlife. And privacy. So these are just some common sense kind of things that CASA's put out in a video. They've also got an app that you can use to understand where you can fly. So that's some info that CASA's put out. I just thought we'd share that before we get started.
Yeah, that's a good little one. I mean, that's a type of video they would put out at Christmas time when, there's going to be thousands and thousands of people open up a box on Christmas Day with an aircraft in it and get them started, I suppose, get them educated. They'll need to pump that home. That's basically that video outlines the standard operating conditions. So I recommend anybody who's going to get started, you've seen the video there. The SOCs, as we call them, or the standard operating conditions, are a real basic set of safety procedures that if you know nothing else about flying these aircraft, that you start there. And if you're within the standard operating conditions, there's a good chance that you're not breaking any other laws. And so, of course, it can be it can seem very complicated too. There are no privacy recommendations in the SOCs. They have nothing to do with that. They're purely safety guidelines, if you like, and they're pretty good. They work.
Yeah. Pardon me, I'm just trying to get those chat comments back on the screen in the background. That's why I took myself off the screen, but it's not to be. Such is life.
That's all right. Here we go. Look, that's a good video. Just in the other news, Greg, about CASA has increased their level of flying operations inspectors, and they have just started an audit. So all operators, of which there are now 1,300 REOC holders or operators in Australia now, commercial operators, and 10,500 excluded commercial operators, which are operating unlicensed in the commercial category, sub 2 kilo, just got a message about doing a census. So I've started the census, and it's going to be quite thorough. CASA wants a snapshot basically of 2017. They've had some good survey data up to 2016. They want to have a look at 2017 right away. They're going to have to do this every year. It's going to be quite thorough in terms of how many airplanes you're flying, where you're flying, your three main operating spots, who's flying for you, who's flying under the REOC, and how's the work being done. So that's going to be an interesting snapshot for them in terms of the regulator. And of course, we're looking at September next year for drone registration in Australia. Everything over 250 grams from September 2019 will be registered.
Okay. So you got this census request already in your inbox, and also because you're very tightly connected with CASA. Should I, as a non-REOC holder but a licensed pilot, have received this yet, or is it on the way?
No, because you fly under my REOC, your aircraft will be listed as an operating an aircraft under my REOC.
Okay, so those people who are excluded but don't operate under a REOC,
they won't have a census. This is purely an operator census at the moment. I don't think at this stage they're going to conduct a major census until registration comes in. I think that'll be the next point. We're looking at a current count now, and best estimate is that there are 150,000 basically quadcopters, hexacopters, multi-rotor aircraft in Australia overall, 150,000. As I said, 7,500 licensed pilots, remote pilots, 10,500 unlicensed that are operating commercially with sub 2 kilo, and about 1,300 operators. So that's where we are with the numbers. I think CASA just wants to know what we're actually doing. You know, they're the numbers of people that are operating, but what sort of jobs are we doing, and what are our risk mitigation strategy? I noticed that in the survey it says, you know, for your risk mitigation, do you do ongoing mitigation while you're at the job? Do you have a reporting method? So if a pilot comes back from a job and said, look, something happened, this could have been worse, and then how do you treat that risk in future, et cetera, et cetera. Basically procedural things. So anyway, mostly interest of operators, but they're on the ball with it. CASA are getting on with the job that they're supposed to do. Yeah,
okay. So, look, from CASA, let's move on to something a little bit more interesting. And just a reminder, sorry the chat's not on the screen if you've just joined a little bit late. Problems with the technology, it happens. I've got an interesting one, and I'll just bring that up. So, from CASA regulations to flying umbrellas.
Yeah, here we go. It had to come. It had to happen.
Yeah, let's watch the video. For those who watch Ken's show, it's already been played there, but this was too funny. I had to share it as well. So this is someone who's decided that it was a good idea to build an umbrella that's mounted on a drone so that you don't actually have to use your poor hand to hold it up. Poor people, you know. And the only thing that's really crazy is everyone has seen what happens when an umbrella goes inside out. With a drone...
Oh, imagine the wind. Oh.
Yeah. Look, for a start, the drone is pushing its air, and the umbrella is changing the aerodynamic properties for a start, but you add some wind as well and rain.
Well, you know, the only thing about rain, I suppose, is because the rain belting down on top of the umbrella, of course, there is an application for it, and that is that the aircraft is protected from the rain.
The aircraft is protected, yeah.
But any wind at all, and that's not gonna work. That's gonna have an ugly end. You know, I know though that probably developers are trying these sort of things One of the ones I've seen similar to that, which would be interesting, is that if you have an engine failure in that aircraft, it will have a slower descent rate.
It's a parachute.
It's a parachute. I mean, you know, the guy who's actually gone to the trouble to put that together probably thought of all these things. He hasn't really tested it anywhere outside yet. So, there's, you know, obviously the GPS will be a bit restricted. It had to be not made of non-metal parts. All sorts of stuff goes on. But, you know, that's our industry. You know, if you think of it, give it a go, see what happens.
But speaking of potential injuries from this aircraft...
Ouch.
This lady actually did have an incident with a drone in the US. No, it wasn't the umbrella, but I just thought it was a funny segue. Not that anyone would want anyone to be injured by a drone, but anyway, let's move on.
That looks nasty.
Yeah, it's people are debating on social media if that was legit or if it was fake, but apparently the TV news crew who was covering that, they actually saw some subsequent footage from street surveillance cameras and all of that kind of stuff, and there was a drone flying at the time she claimed to have been injured. So,
well, until you know what the story is, she may have been flying it herself.
Apparently not. Apparently not.
Apparently not. That may be it. But of course, the news is news, and no one likes to get injured by these things. A warning that you know the heavier airplanes can be quite damaging.
Yeah, definitely 30 metres is the regulations in Australia, and I'm sure there are similar requirements elsewhere in the world.
Yep.
But moving on to something else. So, John, you told me about some stuff. I think you said it was in Spain?
That's right, yeah. At the moment, there's a company in Spain who is looking at what we call UTM and ATM. So the acronyms, let's sort them out. ATM is air traffic management. UTM is unmanned aerial vehicle traffic management. And so one of the things that many universities around the world have been doing is looking at UTM as a separate low-level UTM, managing low-level aircraft and drones together, and then ATM, which is more commercial space, which, you know, there are, of course, all around the world, good and successful ATM, and whether they would be integrated or separate. So the only way to really work this out in the future is to try it. So Spain, a company in Spain has decided to merge AirMap, which is a DJI offshoot. Actually, it's more than DJI. It's actually another company that uses DJI's C2 link to monitor the aircraft, and merged it in with Spain's air traffic management ATM system. And they did a demonstration of it, basically. It's really sort of been one of the first demonstrations of ATM, UTM together.
So you said they're using the C2 link. Do you have to be using a custom app to be sending that info, yeah?
At the moment, all it's doing is using what Aeroscope would pick up, or the C2 link from DJI aircraft is being transmitted and collected. My guess is that, there's a number of ways that, of course, you can transmit that data, as you know, through the DJI Go app. We're sort of familiar that can be transmitted over the internet, the position of the aircraft. We also know that Aeroscope and other detection systems are able to pick up the Wi-Fi transmission signal. So whether it's a combination of that, they didn't disclose. They basically just showed a video. But if you want to Google that video, I haven't chased it up. I don't know if you've seen it, Greg, but I've seen it.
Yeah, so I've got two clips for you. First of all, just a photo of that system that was shown as part of the trials.
Okay.
So supposedly this is the combination of the ATM and UTM on the map, supposedly, but, you know, it's, from a news clipping.
That's interesting.
And we've also got just a general AirMap clip just to share with people a little bit about that. We'll quickly chuck that up.
Yeah, managing multiple aircraft. It's a great tool for that. You know, it was really designed for enterprise first live use space. So this is a UTM. There you go, UTM service provider. This is an unmanned traffic management system. There's still a lot of debate on whether they need to be combined. You know, commercial air traffic, except for around airports, aren't going to use or be in the same system or need to be in the same system.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sort of thinking that UTM should manage lightweight commercial aircraft, drones and so forth, and then anything that's high altitude, military and so forth should be part of the ATM. That's pretty simple to work out.
Yeah.
There we go, looking at the track of the flight telemetry. And you, of course, what you'll be able to do in future is if you've got a flight plan or a plan that you want to fly in a sensitive area or around a sensitive area, you could upload that and into the UTM and gain approval for it. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Look, let's move on from that. It was certainly interesting having a look at it, and the video that you're looking at now is came out of Switzerland, not out of Spain. So they were having a look at a
Everyone's
demo.
looking at it at the moment. The Americans have got a system called LANC at the moment that they're trialling, which is low altitude authorization system. So LANC is kind of another one. So everyone's grappling for a bit of a way to move forward on how this is going to work.
Yeah.
But those of you that fly recreationally, and I know there are many of you, just fly to the SOC, standard operating conditions, and you're as good as gold.
Absolutely. So we've got one or two more quick ones up front. So this is an aircraft that I came across, and it was a VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. It's military-based application, but I just thought it was interesting and unique. So let's have a quick peek at that as well. The audio from that clip's not working, but that's all right.
That's right. You can hear me. I can tell you where the... oh, there we go. It's quite an interesting design, isn't it? Look at that. You know, we're looking at quad planes at the moment, which is a hybrid aircraft. CASA have decided to classify these aircraft as powered lift. And they put tilt rotor underneath that as well. So it's going to be a very fast emerging technology, this, where we've got hybrid type aircraft. How they do classify them is important because it determines on what it can do, where it can go, what its levels of safety are. At the moment, the quad plane, and there's a very good Canberra UAV, have got quite a number of successful quad planes flying. In Australia, they certainly are the leaders in that technology. I've seen some great things, and they just basically get a model aircraft, like a normal high-wing Cessna-looking aircraft, and put four rotors on it and lift it up. You know, so it's got a very simple platform, but they've got the software working properly. What you're looking at there, folks, is software. It's really all about the software and how it works within the machine itself.
Yeah.
Very good. Look at that thing.
Top speed of 180 kilometers per hour, 2.6 hours flight time, and it can lift 500 kilos or 1,100 pounds for those who are not in the rest of the world, America.
So that's a lifting body. That's actually a lifting fuselage in forward flight.
Yep.
And so the actual fuse itself, not having, is a wing. Wow, look at that. What's the size of it? I can't tell. Is it really...
It's pretty big. It's designed for people or cargo.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. That's a ripper. Wow.
Look, it's an interesting aircraft. It's developed by a company called Tactical Robotics. 180 kilometers per hour top speed. So, interesting.
Yep, fantastic.
I've got Jazz Ariel in the chat. Hi, thanks for joining. We've covered a lot of your news, so thanks for that. Let's... if anyone wants to say hi to Jazz Ariel or go and watch his channel, encourage you to do that. But certainly the news, he has helped to bring some of that information to us today. Here's an interesting one that we came across. This is for US people, HR, which is their House of Representatives, 5155. This is a bill that went through in the House. And just reading here, it's the National Defence Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2019 with an overwhelming majority vote of 351 to 61. The bill includes a ban on the US government's use of many Chinese-made technology and security products. And people have been interpreting this as specifically including DJI. The concerns were relating to a combination of information security vulnerabilities combined with state-owned and controlled companies being heavily involved in a lot of those products. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's going to be a big hit.
When's that come into play?
Don't know, but it was for the fiscal year 2019 US fiscal year. I don't know if they run July or January.
Well, if you like to read between the lines in these things, and I do sometimes, you know, the Americans here have seen the Chinese go so hard and fast on this technology. They have been left in the wake, hopelessly in the wake in a commercial level. And I can tell you what, understandably, the Americans don't like it. If they wanted to keep them out of their country for any reason, then, you know, the user are probably not that keen. But I would understand if in a country that if you wanted to gain a bit of commercial traction in your own technology, yeah, you just sell them. You can't bring it in. We don't want them anymore. You know, it might not happen in the rest of the world. It won't happen here. But whether they're, I actually think there probably are some real security concerns, and you and I have discussed that on this show before, and got evidence of it as well. You know, but if you read right between the lines, what do you think? Send us a chat whether you think that's they're just closing up the door so that they can get on with selling their own products. Is that a Trumpistic attitude that we see?
I think it's very Trump influenced, but I don't have any evidence of that. Just based on what I've seen of his, you know, nationalistic kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. By the way,
I don't either.
Say, a country that decides to do that is perfectly at liberty to, you know, and that's their business. It really is.
And certainly Jazz Ariel is just stating the US military has already banned the use of DJI products. Yes, they did, but DJI responded by creating a lights-out version of the app which doesn't connect to the internet, specifically to cover security-related uses by government in particular. But this seems to be going a bit further and saying, it doesn't matter, we don't want you to have your products in our country.
Well, it's another reason to look at the parrot. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, the French will stand up there and say, well, you know, have a look at our system. Well, we've got a good track record of security, and if they build an aeroplane that allows you know, the US import and they can use it, but that will change things in DJI's world significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one more quick non-video related story. And this is a partnership with DJI. They've actually partnered up with a company called Axon, I believe is the name, which is formerly known as TASER, on a new venture to sell drones directly to United States law enforcement. Now, it's interesting that they're trying to do that at the same time as the US is trying to shut them out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's their backdoor way in. I don't know. Maybe Axon is going to certify some certain things about the way they're going to be distributed and used to disconnect from the mothership. Not sure.
More importantly, have you got video of someone being tasered from a drone? That's what we want to know right now. That's all we're...
Look, it was on the tip of my tongue. I looked for it. I couldn't find anything with that.
Okay.
But
all right, yeah.
It's only a matter of time, I think.
Oh, of course.
With that partnership.
Flamethrowers and, you know, rifles and everything else at the moment. So, you know, why not the old cattle prod? Of course, I can't even begin to think about how much battery it might use.
Well, they've got their own separate battery in that unit, but
they do.
Yeah. The particular usage in question is from a Phantom 4 Pro and upwards. They're obviously not playing in the lower products. But sure. Certainly that partnership, I understand, is from the Phantom 4 Pro and up.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay, and just to finish off the news today, and it's been a very long news segment, primarily because I didn't have other topics today, so I just said, let's have a lot of news. So
it's always good.
Yeah. Verity is a company that I hadn't heard of before, but everyone's heard of Cirque du Soleil, and the use of drones in entertainment, we've all seen a lot of the Intel stuff, but apparently Cirque du Soleil is looking at using drones as performers as part of their shows. And we have some video from Verity showing their wares as putting this together. Let's have a look.
Oh, yeah?
So this is in TED Talk, so obviously not at Cirque du Soleil, but they're obviously in partnership with them from what we hear in the news story to pull that together.
There's huge commercial benefit in this swarm technology for very lightweight aircraft. See, the other thing is, Greg, those little small aircraft that are below 100 grams aren't restricted from the 30-metre rule. So, of course, they can fly in a stadium inside. There's no real risk to people from those nano aircraft, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a pretty complex system, mind you. It's not an easy one to pull off. So there'll be only a few players in that regard.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to potentially Vivid picking this up for Australia as part of their festival. I'm sure they'll consider that at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot more of it now. You know, we've seen drone records done with a massive amount, and as I say, Intel's playing a big part in that in terms of entertainment. There's a lot of entertainment that these aircraft can bring anyway. And look, while you're wrapping up news, I'm going to give you a little bit of a teaser for the next program, our news segment, the next program.
Okay.
In Las Vegas, 4 or 5 days ago, a news reporter was given a ride in a manned aerial vehicle in the Nevada desert, where they have been testing passenger carrying drones there, quadcopters. This is it's an X8 configuration. We haven't got photos of it yet, but we did hear a radio interview, and this young female reporter went for a ride. They limited the speed to 6 miles per hour and low level. So it was absolutely very, very interesting story to come out, where we've got a non-pilot just going for a ride. So under controlled conditions, of course. So I'll get some news on that for our next program.
Yeah, okay. Look, I'd definitely like to have a look at that. So that's all we've got in the news. Now, in terms of the main topics, and I've got to press a button to go to that. We're going to have some time. I was going to have XJet here today as a guest, but unfortunately that didn't happen. It's episode 13. Anything that can go wrong did go wrong. So I just want to spend a little bit of time to chat to people in the chat room, see what's happening with you. And at the same time, as a kind of a prelude to what we're going to have a look at next, I do like to include Australian footage as much as possible. And we've got some footage in a couple of moments from a guy that's about farming in Australia and the farming life cycle. We'll have a look at that in a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, let's have a look what's in the chat room. Mel is there, 400 AGL. He's been working on his repairs. There's a new DJI repair place in Arlington. That's where they were sent. Jazz Ariel, John, he says you're discussing the Google car. Is that right?
I think that might be right. I didn't really catch that. I think I might be discussing the Google car. One of the comments that came out of it was the fact that we were spending all of this technology on driverless cars, and of course the simple way to do this is to fly. There's no doubt about that. Rather than it's a lot more dangerous to be in a car on the ground that's driving itself than it is to be in the air. So they'll be watching that play out too. And I wasn't sure, but thanks for if that is what that is. That'll be very interesting. I'll be doing some research on it for us anyway. So anything you find, pass it on. Drop it into the channel notes and channel links. That'd be great.
I hear from Lloyd Mendenhall, the grumpy vlogger, Casey Neistat was to fly one yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So
is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting too. I think this will create an enormous amount of media interest, and obviously they're clever. They're sending them journos up first. You know, there's no better way to get a good story than send a journo up. And the comments I heard, that of course it was very easy to fly. Well, you weren't flying it; it was flying itself, pretty much. And you can really understand how the stability algorithms have improved so much now. You know, look, carrying umbrellas, and you know, there's a lot of aerodynamic and software advances we're seeing all the time. Those that fly in the Argycopter world will be aware just how fast and how quickly stability moves in terms of the algorithms that fly the aircraft. They really are quite special. So I'm seeing updates more regularly these days as more and more brains trust, if you like, and mathematicians come into the aeronautics world.
Yeah.
Not that they're not there already.
Okay, we've just about finished all of the questions there. They limit the flights to 10 feet high and 20 miles per hour, 2 hours of training.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yep. That's the one I heard. Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So thanks for that. I'm going to check that out. Well, let's get some segment on it. It's worthwhile doing a segment on it, Greg. I think it's got so much application for search and rescue and medical evac stuff that's going to happen. There's going to be a huge push for that. You know, if we can get these airplanes carrying people from an injured state, an accident site, to a hospital autonomously, there's going to be a great demand for that. It'll save lives, basically, lots of them.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our final piece for the day. So normally I'd have a viewer video, but I didn't have any submissions last week. I went searching for something that was Australian related, and I found this guy, JB Aerial. So True Blue Aussie, and let's start with clip number 1. There's actually 3 clips here that I'm just going to play a little bit of each one. So this one was shot last year and is entitled Harvest.
Very nice. One of the great things to see about these shots, those of you that are videographers, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I've been studying more and more well-shot videos like this, is just planning your shot so that, and what the interest and the movement is. So you notice back there, now we're seeing a panning shot where the articles, now here you're watching a reveal. I know that's a different one, but before we let the plough device or the harvester come into shot and leave the shot, so it's a reveal, but here now we're looking at a point of view. Oh yeah, another great one. Just start to notice, the more you watch well edited and well planned videos, just how engaging they are and what the story is told. You know, that would be the wrong shot to put first, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the planning, once you've got your shots, putting them together like that. Here's another one where we're into an interesting reveal. This time the aircraft is revealing, or the camera is revealing more and more of what the actual image is. Now we've got a static. It's great.
So we got 3 videos. We'll just quickly cut over to the next one.
That's very good.
So after harvesting, what comes next? And you know, I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined that this is part of farming.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it is. But in Australia, it's a big part. Terms in the cane fields. Look at that. Lovely job.
So burning off after doing the harvesting, what's left to clear that down again. And
yep.
Like I said, I'm not a farmer, so I wouldn't have known that fire was a big part of it.
There we go. Nice reveal of high altitude shot there, just showing how it's all working.
And the original video that I came across, we'll queue up in just a second, but that was the sowing of the seeds. So the first 2 videos you've just seen were from last year, And then then the final one we'll just quickly bring up now. So this is the first one I saw when I was searching around for some Aussie content today.
Yeah, it's great. Little things that make a difference, guys, are like having a level horizon. So you can see that little bit out there, see that horizon? So when you are setting up for a shot like that, and look, you know, it's not so much a problem point. You'll get shots like that. But when you're actually planning it, if you can, calibrate and set your gimbal so that you're always looking at a level horizon.
We can see there the aircraft. We could see the shadow of the aircraft there. Something else to try and avoid, not because it's bad, but just to avoid the distraction.
Yeah, that's right. Often, sometimes it's a choice to put that in. You know, look at this. That's great. And again, going for that's quite a difficult shot to line up while you're panning vertically and getting the lines to be vertical as well. You really need to, you know, to plan that. And he's pretty close. That's pretty close to vertical in terms of the lining of it. So nice point of view shot. Again, horizon's a little bit more level now. It makes a real difference when you're panning around like that. If that horizon is crack on level, and you can set up grid lines on your vision, if you like, where you've got your screen, your iPad or whatever. Load up the grid lines and use a full set of grid lines so that when you are lining up your shots, you can see what level is and dead level is. That's great. Really good job. It's a great video, no doubt about that.
Yeah, so some really nice content. Apologies, someone asked who was that singing in the background. Apologies, I don't know the answer to that. That was the original audio provided.
It's probably the radio in the tractor, I'd say. These days at night like that, those tractors are driven by RTK GPS and autopilot, of course. So, you know, a lot of precision agriculture these days is done. And we've done jobs where we've flown the paddock before with RTK GPS, and given those maps, if you like, those RTK maps to the tractor, and shared the KML files with the tractor so that the tractor can do the job.
Yeah, I just want to quickly touch on something interesting that I came across, and it was a video made by Chris Rollins, and he was talking about course lock mode.
Yep.
I love it. I saw it there, but I didn't really think about the application. It's kind of like a dolly version, you know, for your Phantom.
It
doesn't have the zoom like the one we were talking about before, but set up the aircraft, point it where you want it to go. You can control forward and back, and you can separately control the camera.
Yep.
Without worrying so much about where you're going, because it's going to keep going in the same direction. Really nice feature.
It is a nice feature. You know, there's some more, if you love course lock mode, Greg, there's some more advanced ways to use that idea with programs like Autopilot from Autoflight, where you can set the actual aircraft on a cable, if you like, in a course lock mode. So you're not just limited to straight line course lock flying. And so some people who are doing repetitive shots, you might be on a film shoot where the director has got a shot, you've programmed it into autopilot, and you might have a variable. So the aircraft is tracking along a road, and you know, a car's got to stop and meet a person on a bike, and you want a rotating shot. It's supposed to happen at the same place each time. Little variables happen. So the type of course lock mode where that's used in shooting film and video, where you're using a plan, is very, very handy. And you might still have the camera pan under manual control, but pretty much everything else is done automatically. And then you just repeat the shots. They might do, you know, 7 or 8 or more takes of that shot. And of course, you've got the aircraft pre-planned to do the actual flying exactly where you need it to be, and just then looking at your exposure settings and other things. So a lot of that automation in its more advanced forms is really, really good. If you're using it on a day-to-day basis, I mean, you know, just remember what mode you're in. The caution here from someone who's done a lot of flying is mode awareness is the most important thing. They're making sure that all of a sudden you've got something go wrong, that you return to manual mode or ADI mode or whatever mode you're going to go to, course lock mode, that you can change quickly back to a mode where you can take control of the aircraft quickly.
Yeah, so if you are in an automated mode of some sort, flicking your switch at the back and switching it back again, that's going to take you out of whatever.
That'll take, and look, whatever your aircraft is, knowing how that's done, you know, and quickly being able to regain control of the aircraft into a mode that you've got control, whether it's RTH. I mean, I say to people, if you get lost or you get confused and you're in another automated mode, you've got a flight plan running, just send a return to home signal to the aircraft, and at least you know, if it receives that and starts engaging that, you're in a known mode, if you like, which is what's important about. And of course, if you go back into aviation safety stories, the Korean Airlines flight that was shot down over the peninsula in Russia was a mode awareness problem. The pilot thought he was in navigation track following the GPS, and the aircraft was in heading mode. So it goes right back. There are countless aviation safety issues with mode awareness where the pilot's not aware of what mode the autopilot's flying in. So trap for players, but there you go. I'll add that in for my 2 cents worth on that one. And
not just remotely piloted, the manned aircraft as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, mode awareness is important.
Yeah. So I just want to add one point. I noticed there's a few people in the chat room today that are part of the I Am a Creator community, and that disappeared off the screen. I'll just press the button again so it can stay there. So I came across this, and I mentioned it before through some other people who are regulars here. I encourage you to go and search out this hashtag in YouTube. Not everything in there is going to be of interest to you. I'm personally not interested in the greatest techniques of how to apply makeup or things like that. But if you are, go and have a look at those videos. But there are a lot of drone people in that community as well. One of them is actually in the channel here a few moments ago. Aussie Mark, he's a droner as well. I encourage you to go and have a look at his channel. He's part of this community as well. He's got some good drone footage. And join their channels, become a subscriber. It helps the small channels like them and us to grow. So that'd be really good. And again, as I said at the beginning of the show today, if you could help us out, and I'll just put those messages back up. If you could help us out, that would be really, really good. If you're not already a subscriber, please do subscribe. Please do hit the bell. If you are a Facebook user, please go to our page, like the page. It is so important to do that, because that's going to make other people aware of us. That helps a lot. Thirdly, Twitter. Again, tweet about our broadcasts or anything that you think is relevant. That's really cool. And I would love, Aussie Mark, and I'll pick you out in particular because I know you're a drone flyer and I know you're in Australia. If you've got some footage that you'd like to share, tell us which one and we'll chuck it up next week and have a chat to you about it, and that'd be really cool. Okay. And yes, Marcel, no, Steve. Steve is the one who said, can you please hit the like button? That is important. It helps boost the channel as well. So definitely appreciate that. So that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, John, for being here as always.
That's all right. My pleasure.
And I'll see you next time.
See you, everybody.
Bye for now.
Fly safe.